If you're tired of staring at the blank page, then this simple exercise might just be the thing that changes your creative process forever. As artists, it's easy to find a lot of challenge when it comes to dealing with the blank page. And we can even go further down the rabbit hole, often being sort of paralyzed by a lot of the emotions we feel when we kind of just sit down and we don't really know what to do. We don't know what to draw. We don't know what to create. This is certainly something that personally I have faced over the years. And not only that, but I noticed a lot of students that I would be teaching were facing exactly the same issue. So over the years, I've developed for myself a lot of really simple tactics and ideas and thought processes that I'd use to kind of get over the blank page. And I put a lot of them as systems and ideas into the courses that I run. Now, there's a lot of strategies that we can use to handle this issue, but one that I think is the most important is a really simple idea that I like to call the like list. And this is as basic as it sounds. What we're going to do is a journaling style exercise where we write out all of the things that we really like to draw, the things that we really have always loved to draw. I think this is about reconnecting with why you became an artist and what are the things that, look, maybe aren't quite so challenging or fancy to draw, but you specifically really always just enjoy drawing. So this is a really simple idea, but there is more to it than that. And in this video, what I want to do is walk you through this process and share with you some of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm doing this exercise. And also in this video, I'll do a demo where I show you how I actually apply these ideas to a sketching session. And while I do that, I'll kind of talk a little bit more in depth about the whole concept of how we can sort of tackle the blank page and figure out how to reconnect with what we really like to draw. As usual for a Drawing Codex video, this is going to be neither fast-paced nor heavily edited. You can think of this just as a casual conversation or a casual lesson. We're just going to talk about these issues. I'm going to walk you through how to do this exercise and then show you how I do it. And again, we're going to be able to talk about the blank page, sketching, and creativity. Alright, welcome to the Drawing Codex. My name is Tim McBurney. I've been a professional working artist for over 20 years, and on this channel, we're all about drawing cool stuff from our imagination, embracing the challenge of drawing, and mastering the craft of line and color illustration. Now, if you'd like to learn more about illustration and picture making, you can check out my free illustration mini workshop. It charts my journey going from an amateur to a professional, and I talk a lot about really important issues such as how to get more detail and polish in your work, how to plan your images, create thumbnails, and also a few thoughts on how to approach being a professional artist. As I said, it's free. The link will be in the description. Go check it out if that's something you're interested in. So this is a really simple idea, a really simple exercise, but I think, and a lot of my teaching is about understanding that often simple tools and just doing the basic things, just remembering to repeatedly do this and kind of stay on target, often that is the answer, right? We often don't need a really complicated series of things. You just got to remember to keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep doing the basics. And I think just doing a lot of these sort of basic journaling exercises, basic sort of creativity tasks where you just kind of remember what's important to you about you being an artist. I think if you can do these things, it makes a huge difference. And again, I found that often it is actually these things and figuring out the productivity side of your art and really figuring out how to like consistently turn up and just enjoy creating the work that you want. This is actually what makes the difference. A big part of, again, a lot of my sort of teaching theory is about sort of learning through doing, right? And that we can actually learn a lot about illustration and picture making and how to actually make art that connects with people simply by practicing doing it, right? That often that is all we need, but we do need sort of structure and frameworks around that so that we kind of have some directionality. And also, we need to build a good habit and ritual, a good consistent artistic practice. And that's a big part of what this will do, is developing the systems around stuff like this, like figuring out what you actually like to draw and making sure that you have some way of sort of remembering that. So every time you're not sitting there looking at the blank page thinking, what do I draw? Like, what do I do? Again, it's often these things that actually make the difference, because if you kind of just get to making art and you're doing it regularly, you're enjoying it, you're exploring your creativity, then it's really easy to learn fundamental things and kind of fold them into your kind of daily creative practice or weekly creative practice or whatever you can manage, right? So again, this is a major part of a lot of the sort of core structures that I teach, but I really want to sort of bring it to you here in this video here on YouTube. And again, we can go deep and really look at kind of how this works. And again, I really want to sort of demonstrate it, because what I've noticed is, like, even when we say, like, hey, this is a really simple idea, people can be looking at the page going, I don't even know what to write down, right? So this often operates at many levels, right? And I think often the hesitation we can feel as artists can run pretty deep. So anyway, I just want to explore this sort of concept and make sure that you've got some really good tools here for figuring out what you like to draw and how to defeat the blank page. So what we're going to do is simply make a list of the things that we like to draw. But again, hang around, because there are some sort of wrinkles to this. What I want to do first, though, is just talk about, I guess, the value of doing this, because this is something where you can go down the rabbit hole with this. I think if you kind of do it properly, this is in many ways like a meditation and a reconnection sort of in your mind that we're sort of doing through journaling, of just really reconnecting with why you like to draw particular things, why you are an artist. It's easy to kind of get sidetracked by like what's cool, what's popular, what other people are doing, what other people's styles are, and we kind of lose connection with like, what did you really enjoy reading as a kid, right? You know, what are you really passionate about? Often, you know, these things can either be sort of cozy or things that you feel like often are easy for you to draw. There's sort of cozy subjects like cozy fantasy, cozy science fiction, and things that we may not feel as if are enough of a challenge for us, either on the idea front or the technicality front, whatever it is. Like, often we feel like we need to sort of push ourselves. And often, you know, if you are pushing yourself and you're building drawing skills and you're kind of getting better, and, you know, sometimes that's working, and then sometimes you might sit down and you can kind of tell that like you just want to draw for fun, and we kind of feel as if maybe we shouldn't be doing that. There's like a million of these little things where we tell ourselves stories and we kind of drift away from why we became artists and what we actually like to do. And I think having this as a memory, right? So the list that we build is a memory of us going through and thinking about this. And through looking at the list, when you're sort of drawing and dealing with like pencil, there's a degree to where like you memorize the things that you were thinking as you kind of go through the process of actually writing something down. And it works better in terms of your memory than if you're just sort of typing things on a computer or just kind of clicking things online. I think there's a real sort of power to doing this with, you know, traditionally with a pencil. So if you do it properly, I think it is something that could take you a couple of hours, and you really sort of go deep and relax and sort of think about why you like drawing, and again, curate these lists. It doesn't have to stop here. You can sort of keep going. You can tweak it. This is a living document. One of the things I often do is kind of put these at the front of a sketchbook, right? And just kind of write them here. And that way I can kind of go back to it. And every time I start a sketchbook, I kind of have to revisit that. It's not in this sketchbook because I have way too many sketchbooks, but yeah, it's a way to kind of constantly revisit this. So this is not necessarily something you just do once. This might be a reminder that this is a cool thing to do. So what we're going to do in this exercise as a demonstration, though, is we'll just do it for 5 or 10 minutes. And that, I think, is a really good way to kind of get started on this journey of thinking about this, because sitting down for 2 hours and journaling may be completely alien to you, and that's totally fine. This is a muscle you can build to, again, with pencil and paper, very similar to drawing. And you can incorporate, this is one of the things we'll look at, you can incorporate drawing into this exercise in some really fun ways, and kind of combine your artistic self with your journaling self. But yeah, you know, in the beginning, let's just do 5 or 10 minutes, because this will get the ball rolling. And then you can kind of go back and think about it. And again, these ideas will start to ruminate. And the idea is we just make this part of our artistic practice, is to really think about what we actually like drawing. So anyway, it's a really, really simple idea, but I think it can be really, really powerful. Now, this is actually something that I do a lot when I'm sort of preparing for demos or to, you know, do sort of art ritual videos or just sort of anything like this. I often sort of go back to these ideas. So here I recently did an art ritual video where I was talking about quick sketching, and I was sort of preparing to draw like this thing. And I was literally going through like, okay, what do I actually like drawing? Like, what's something fun that I think would be easy for me to sort of do as a demo so I can talk and sort of draw at the same time? And this is something that I'm frequently doing, is kind of this like 5% of planning, of like thinking about what I'm doing before I actually sit down to do it. So this is the kind of stuff that I frequently do, right? And, I've written these lists sort of a couple of times, but yeah, anyway, what we're going to do in this session is I'll just kind of sit here and do some ideation, and I'll sort of brainstorm it. But again, I'll sort of fast forward it because probably I need to use my brain to do this. And if I'm kind of doing two things at once, it won't turn out that well as a brainstorming exercise. So I'll kind of do this, and then I'll sort of speed it up so you can kind of see the process. And then again, we'll talk once we've sort of finished that process. And again, if you want, pause the video now and just grab any bit of paper and just go at it, right? For 5 or 10 minutes, unpause the video, and I'll see you then. Okay, so there is my list. And again, this is just sort of me doing this as a demo. I'm just sort of trying to demonstrate this. And again, I really think, going deeper, really thinking about it, spending some time doing this and going, as long as you can is a really good idea, because often when you sort of run out of ideas, you start to think, hey, what about this? What about that? And I think that's often when we get a little bit more connected with, again, the deeper side of why we became artists. But let's look at, okay, this is really simple. How can we go further? How can we take it a little bit further? There's a couple of ways that I think we can really think about this. I think we can make this into a little bit more of a system that'll help us to think about scenarios or the ways that we can combine ideas. And often combining ideas that pre-exist gives us a little bit of that brainstorming kind of creativity vibe. And you kind of maybe start to feel more ideas start to flow when we start sort of combining and categorizing these in some ways. The other thing we could do is we can draw these out, which may be the difference, right? That may be something that works significantly better for you than writing them out, is to actually sort of draw them out. So we'll look at kind of how we might do that, both of those things. So firstly, let's look at how you might sort of organize these better, right? So we can think about often what we're trying to do is spark some feeling of sort of creativity, or we're going to be able to create something new. So I think about this as kind of like location, right? And then you could kind of maybe even have like sort of feeling, right? Or vibe. And then we could have sort of character, right? Or sort of subject. And then we could have, I guess, like some kind of story, right? Or, right, something else that's kind of happening. And I think sort of categorizing, or maybe even starting, right? So if you kind of done this session as like, okay, let's do it and break it down even more and think about like, what are some locations or environments or settings that you really think would be cool? This could be like a, cyberpunk, or it could be science fiction, like hard science fiction. It could just be sort of modern day romance, right? It could be sort of, realistic kind of magical sort of fantasy. There's a huge variety of things that this could be, whatever is interesting for you, but really think about the location, or I guess you could sort of mix in genre with that as well, because those things are often combined in our mind. Again, think about like the feelings that you sort of want to have. That's where I was often putting in ideas like adventure, right? Like adventure or sort of journey. Like they are kind of an action, but it's almost like a feeling as well, right? Of there being an adventure or there being a journey. And that often it's these ideas that can really change how you view everything else. So if we sort of think about this as like, okay, if I'm just doing my fantasy stuff, I could sort of, right, say, let's do like forest fantasy, right? Or you could do sort of dungeon fantasy, or you might sort of go, explore like new alien world. All right, I'm getting a bit sort of messy there. But yeah, like you can do multiple drafts of this. Let's go old school, right? You could obviously do this digitally, right? Take some notes digitally. I mean, whatever works for you. I think writing it down is honestly where you're going to find, like, the most value, personally. But again, character, subject, right? This is where it would be like sort of elves, right? Right? Or, elven princess, space mercenary. And here's, like, I guess sort of the story, right? Like, sort of what's happening, right? Is this kind of a meeting, right? Is this about sort of romance, discovery, right? And you will tend to find that, like, your art often sort of flows with pretty sort of standard things that you're really going to find inspiring, right? In terms of the type of art you want to make, right? And again, this is something that can overlay into you being a concept artist, right? You could just be drawing characters, right? And that's all you ever do is just design characters. But, thinking about maybe the environments they would inhabit or where they're going will maybe help you to think about how you would design a character that might fit into a larger world, right? So again, it's not necessarily that you have to draw a background. It's that thinking about the environment or the background that character or object would be in is a good way to inspire your creativity. So that's the first thing we can do, right? Is sort of organize and categorize. And then, right, then we can mix. Right? Mix and match. Again, my spelling is at sort of probably 90 to 95%. So apologies for any of that. I'm an artist, right? It's okay. You're an artist too. It's fine. If we get to that degree, we can probably just draw it anyway, right? It's totally fine. So, this is where, again, you can start to combine things. And if you have a bigger list than this, right, that'll make sense, right? But, maybe start to combine. This is where you could sort of say, like, maybe I'm drawing sci-fi aliens, but magic is happening, right? Or like sci-fi aliens with sort of rider beasts, right? You've sort of got Princess of Mars, or, all sorts of cool things that could sort of happen there. So the things that I kind of wrote down was like elven princess, like cozy fantasy, dwarves, trees, magic objects, people sitting around a campfire. I don't know. I always just kind of think like that will be fun to draw. Again, it's just me, right? Doesn't make any sense. I can't explain it. I'm like, that just seems like a fun thing, right? I always draw these kind of, it's a character discovering something, right? I'm often sort of drawing that same scene, right? It's like a character and they're kind of like sitting or standing in front of like something that they're kind of just exploring or discovering, right? Going back to the idea of there being sort of journey, discovery as sort of a story. Or like, the idea of sort of adventure, a character meets an interesting creature, science fiction, aliens, space mercenaries, witches, spaceships, barbarians. You can see, again, my brain is just bouncing all over the place. I often like to just draw a journey. Like, again, what would be an interesting journey? Cool characters traveling in a landscape. Again, that's just one of those things that I just kind of tend to draw a lot. Creatures as pets, right? Again, thinking about little creatures or things that might accompany a character on an adventure, like rider beast magic happening in some way, shape, or form. I really like the idea of undead empires, right? Sort of organized, zombified sort of empires, right? Are characters from my book, or maybe like new characters that would fit in that world. I always, again, I drew these books like Pinocchio and Seven Pirates, and I always sort of forget that sometimes if I'm just kind of sitting there going like, what do I draw? Like I'm just sitting down, and I'm really often just wanting to warm up or kind of get things going. I'm like, let's just draw some characters that I've designed before. Like, that'll be fun. Again, it often feels like, especially if you're sort of in more of like a concept design frame of mind, it can often seem like drawing characters that already exist or that you've already designed is like pointless, but as a warm-up exercise or something that's fun to do, that can be really good, right? You may also have a whole bunch of fan art stuff here that kind of really works for you. Again, it's totally up to you. Pirate magic or fantasy, again, combining the idea of magic and fantasy with pirates, right? Like Pirates of the Caribbean. That's a really sort of fun idea, like mythological gods, mythological creatures, or sort of pantheons. again, drawing creatures from different mythological sort of stories throughout the years and different cultures is a really fun thing to do. Cute goblins or small creatures, right? Again, I could go on. I could probably do, way more of this. And again, as you sort of get to the end, you start to run dry. You'll be like, oh, I don't know. But again, I think that's often where the magic happens. So, this is just like a 5 or 10 minute exercise, but you could go further. And the next thing is to kind of start to mix and match, right? And again, sort of, as I was saying, sci-fi aliens mixed with magic, or like what would undead science fiction aliens be? Again, what would sort of science fiction dwarves be? What would trees look like on a, right? So you could kind of start to sort of think about it. It's like, I've got some cool characters traveling in a landscape. Maybe it is like a science fiction, them discovering sort of some new world, and I've sort of got trees, right? And so then I'm like, okay, I'm going to draw trees, but they're sort of going to be magical alien trees on a distant sort of planet, and there's some cool character kind of walking along. You can see that just sort of brainstorming between them and sort of bouncing these ideas around, it's quite easy for you to sort of get something that is new, but is kind of linked to what you like to draw. And I really feel like thinking this way, for me anyway, and what I recommend, is a lot better than sort of constantly doing monthly art challenges, because those are someone else's ideas. And I think to really build a true artistic voice and kind of figure out who you are, a big part of that is you figuring out what your ideas are about and how you kind of come up with your own sort of ideas and concepts. So, I mean, monthly art challenges are really fun. That there's nothing sort of wrong with that. But again, I think it's good for you to be able to motivate yourself and figure out, what's actually going to get you sort of up in the morning with your own sort of projects. So anyway, that's a way we can kind of twist this idea and get essentially like an infinite number of extra ideas, even out of a really small list like this. The other thing you can do, though, is draw it, right? And this can even be more kind of fun, right? So let's sort of think about, again, this idea of sort of location, right? And I'll just sort of do character, like subject, right? And again, what I'll do is just sort of demonstrate the basic idea here, but I'll kind of speed it up, right? Just so, again, we're sort of not watching paint dry. But again, the goal here is to kind of think about, so I'll just kind of do one or two, like without speeding it up. But, I kind of like the idea of, sort of a castle, right? So we can think about, right? And these can be bad drawings. That's what I'm going to do. You can do good drawings, but I'm going to do bad drawings, right? There's the idea of, right, sort of a castle. So, it's sort of part way between sort of an iconic drawing and, see if we can zoom up here, right? It's sort of a castle, right? We've got sort of a big sort of gate, right? Again, like whatever this kind of means. And then I could kind of go further, right? I could say, like, what's also fun is kind of having, right, like castles, right, sort of like in Lord of the Rings, right? A lot of those kind of cool castles that are sort of built on a hill, right? Again, just like whatever you want. And again, these don't have to be good drawings, right? It's just there to sort of remind you, like, oh yeah, that's right. You can actually figure out how to do a good drawing later on. If we think about sort of characters, right? Again, I often like doing elven princesses, right? And I'm just going to draw, again, like a very sort of simple version of that here, right? We could also say, let's do some dwarves, right? So that's the basic idea. So let me do a few more just to kind of give you an idea for how this might sort of work. And again, this can actually be way more fun to do. And you can obviously combine these sort of different things, do some writing, like whatever. Again, we're creative. It's your sketchbook, your paper, like you can do whatever you want. Okay, so let's look at how we might actually apply this and sort of use it to do some sketching. And again, I guess it's like sort of tricky, but what I'm more often after out of these exercises, again, is to find things that maybe I wouldn't normally draw and to kind of look at how I can combine that maybe with some things that I do like drawing and just inspire a little bit of creativity. So, either I tend to go two different routes with this. One is I just remember, hey, I always like drawing elven princesses. Let's do that. And especially when I'm doing a demo like this, I need to pick something that I'm somewhat comfortable with so I can, have a decent chance of doing something successful. And also so I can kind of have fun doing it. So what I'm going to do is a bit different. Though I'm going to pick something that I haven't kind of drawn for a while, something that's a little bit sort of weirder. Let's go with undead kind of warrior on some sort of griffin-y horse bird thingy, right? I think that might be a fun thing. Again, I don't know whether it would be an undead bird sort of griffin-y thing, but anyway, let's give that a shot. So hopefully you've had a chance to do your kind of list and sort of figure this stuff out. But yeah, the goal here, if we just sort of go boom back here, yeah, is just to kind of have a go at this and see what we're kind of imagining. So in terms of like, where these kind of characters would be, I don't know. I like the idea of maybe them being not necessarily in some castle, but in some kind of thing that has a little bit of structure. So this will be a little bit sort of light and faint. So just kind of bear with me, right, for a minute. So I'm just kind of thinking of like, okay, where do I draw these things? Again, let's draw loose. Let's have fun. I'm not necessarily going to, sort of go crazy with this in terms of detail. But I do want to, at least sort of have a go at doing something that, maybe I sort of wouldn't sort of normally do. So let's think about, we've got some sort of wings back here. Because again, this is about, I guess the whole idea is showing how we can, right, get out in front of our sort of creativity, right, create something that's kind of interesting, right. So yeah, I feel like we could make something kind of cool out of this. Like, where is, so because I always like, again, things that are riding on things, right, and boom. Again, some kind of winged griffin creature. All right, let's draw down. All right, let's find somewhere where I might have like a ground plane. Boom. All right, so imagine this thing is kind of hanging off some bit of architecture or something that kind of doesn't exist. Boom, boom. And yeah, I'm just like, now I kind of have this sort of challenge, right? It's a little bit different. This is sort of different to what I would kind of normally be faced with. And I think often what we need when we're sort of dealing with this sort of blank page, like, it is a bit of a challenge, right? I don't think that creativity works that well. And I actually did a visual sort of scholar podcast on this exact same sort of thing. I'll leave the link to that in the description as well, where like creativity responds well to challenge, right? So when I kind of have unlimited options, which I think is often what we're kind of faced with the blank page, I think that's often the problem, right? Like that's exactly what's sort of going wrong, is that we have unlimited options, and your creative mind doesn't like unlimited stuff, right? We kind of want that feeling of like, oh, I'm sort of feeling unlimited creativity, but I think that often comes from starting with something that's fairly restrictive, right? And so you can think about it as like there being maybe metaphorically like a rebellious spirit to creativity, where, if we sort of have restrictions and someone's kind of telling us what to do, that maybe that is, going to inspire us to rise above that. So here I'm sort of thinking about where the pelvis goes for this sort of undead guy, right? And I'm like, okay, so here I've sort of got the center line of this creature, right? I'm gonna sort of put that tail up there. Although again, like there's actually a fair bit of paper up above here that you kind of can't see. I might zoom out at some point a little bit, see if I can sort of show that. But yeah, this tail will kind of be going up there. And again, in terms of wings, right, we sort of have like shoulder blade, and then right. Again, it's always tricky to know like which type of wings are we doing? Are we doing sort of bird wings? Are we doing sort of dragon wings? I think again the idea here is more sort of bird wings, right? It's been a while since I've sort of worked on my bird wing anatomy. We'll have to see how we go. All right. So again, I think we can kind of focus on like maybe some sort of armor or something like that on this kind of bird guy. All right. Think about the sort of forms involved. Again, just sketching. Boom. All right. And here. Now, I think we'll have this guy kind of sit up, right? Sort of slouching, right? So this kind of S-curve goes over here. And then, right, here's the head. Let's find center. And again, I feel like he can just sort of be looking at us. I really like those kind of old D&D style undead characters, right? Sort of cozy fantasy undead. Right, which is basically like a skeleton in armor. And we kind of like highlight or accentuate often the bulkiness of the armor so that we can demonstrate exactly how much the sort of character is undead, right? Sort of rattling around there. Right, boom. We'll see how I'm going with my sort of skeleton anatomy. Boom. Should probably change pencil. I'll do that in a second. All right, let's draw the top of that sort of helmet. Don't know what's going to be happening there yet. Boom, boom, boom. Let's just sort of check this whole thing, right? Like, yeah, I mean, it's not kind of terrible. Just drew up a few of these lines. Right, like that seems okay, that seems okay. That can probably come down there. Right, kind of look over here, we can kind of see this. Right, just finding some primary form here to kind of help me along. And also, again, trying to see if I can find some good shapes. Let's see if we can have this character as well, right? This guy, his mouth open. Yeah, I don't know whether I'm going to do sort of undead bird, although that kind of would make sense. Again, it's a lot extra. All right, think about maybe some kind of plumage or something like that. Boom, boom. All right. Getting carried away. All right. Let's think about the arms. I like the idea of there being some kind of weapon there. All right. Thinking about where these sort of arms are in space. Just blocking in some of this primary form while I've got this sort of weird, where I can, well, I can sort of actually see it. Yeah, cool. Boom. Yeah, all right. I've got some sort of feathers here, these big sort of feathers, and then other feathers. Probably, again, to do like a really good job of this, we'd have to really look up feather anatomy and stuff like that, which is, it's obviously often not the problem we're trying to solve, right? When we're just kind of looking at that sketchbook page and we're like, oh, come on, I need some good ideas, right? I need to get this creativity sorted. So yeah, I like the idea of kind of there being this sort of belt or something there. Boom, boom, boom. And again, we can undead up a lot of this kind of stuff, right? So maybe this one, the armor is kind of fallen off or something like that, right? We can actually kind of see that bone. Boom. Had a bit of armor fidelity. But yeah, stuff kind of falling off. Don't know what's happening. What's happening with this helmet? Maybe I can give it some sort of cool heraldry or design. Yeah. All right. What else are we doing? I feel like I'm not reading skull in this yet, so we probably got a bit of a way to go before I really kind of find the key marks that are gonna make a difference there. Might need to wait for the sharpened pencil stage. Boom. Yeah, all right. I feel like, again, there's something here, right? And again, let's show that. Right, the bone, hip bone. Again, let's have maybe some of that. Some of the armor kind of missing, right? Okay, and then we got a saddle is kind of here. We've got the center line. Let's pop that up. And then we're going underneath. Boom. So yeah, I think often in terms of sort of like dealing with your sort of creative block, or just like often I think we can, maybe you might not have this kind of epic, artistic block where you're sitting there, staring at the cursor, staring at the blank page, like I'm often personally not dealing with that sort of level of frustration with it. Although, every now and then, yeah, it can be just really frustrating to not know or not feel like we kind of have good ideas. And, I certainly, like, every now and then I kind of, yeah, just think like, wait, like, what am I doing? Like, what's the point of all this? And yeah, I think that's where it's just good to have a couple of these little sort of systems in place to just reconnect. Because often what I find is that when that stuff is going wrong for me, it's because, like, I've often just lost connection with, I'm not really just thinking about sort of what's actually fun, or, like what I actually want to do. Like, if it's not some major thing, it feels like, there's something fundamentally wrong. But mostly I find, there's nothing that wrong with me, or, sort of what's going on. Yeah, it's just kind of just often not doing the basics, right? Not taking care of the basic sort of business of being an artist, right? And staying motivated and staying inspired. And I think often that, again, we often get told that, like, creativity and being an artist are these kind of things that are a talent-based thing, that you kind of don't have much control over them, right? Like, you're either kind of inspired or not, you're either kind of feeling the muse or you're not, right? And I think that's, yeah, it does a disservice to, I think, often just basically kind of understanding what is frequently going on, like when we are sort of being creative, and the fact that you can, do things. You can have systems or ideas or sort of ways of waking up that sort of creative mind and engaging a more sort of creative brainstorming sort of attitude towards things. And I think, yeah, often we're sort of taught to feel as if, like, oh yeah, I'm not sort of feeling it, and therefore, like, there's just sort of something wrong, or like, I'm not an artist, or whatever it is, right? There's a million of these stories. Let me get, boom, one of these. Right, I think that's, we could kind of feel like this thing needs to be way more extreme. Of a yelling bird or squawking bird or whatever. So yeah, think about putting on some kind of armory thing here. Again, super basic. Not really doing much sort of design in terms of, how this stuff would work, or just sort of indicating, playing around, again, sort of sketching. Right, doing the same thing kind of over here, maybe having some kind of armor or something like that. But yeah, this is where, like, probably if I need to do undead birds, yeah, I probably need to think about it a little bit more. Get some reference, which again could just be a matter of like a 5-minute reference gathering thing, but it's outside the scope of what probably got time to do here. We're just doing like 20-minute sort of sketch just to kind of illustrate this and talk a little bit more about those ideas. And yeah, so I think often, like, the other sort of elements that I often talk about sort of in the course are much more a matter of, like, just remembering to kind of surround yourself with art, to find sort of good sources of art, to sort of handle your sort of continual motivation, I guess, right? Again, often we sort of have this feeling of like, oh, I am motivated, or like, oh, now I kind of know what to draw, like I'm sort of sorted. And yeah, I think it's just important to understand, like, this is a process, right? It's sort of maintenance, right? Similar to, if you're doing exercise, right? We don't sort of do a bunch of exercise and then all of a sudden kind of go, well, I'm done, right? I got fit once, that's it, right? It's a process, right? We, the human sort of mind and body sort of goes in these sort of waves and cycles and things, right? And you need to maintain your motivation and inspiration, right? This is something that requires sort of constant readjustment. Not because there's anything wrong with us, just because that's how stuff works, right? That's how the body kind of functions, right? You forget stuff, you focus on other things. And I think often also when it comes to your sort of creativity, often, it's like you will kind of find something that's really good, right? We kind of, if you imagine you're sort of mining for inspirational gold, right? You kind of find a little vein of cool inspiration. You're like, oh yeah, this is it. This is my jam. I'm really into doing this thing. Or, maybe you're kind of learning a new project or, new software or new technique, or, you're learning anatomy and you kind of get better at it. And you're sort of super psyched about this thing and it's kind of all working well. And then often, like, I think part of it also is that creativity and the artistic spirit needs a bit of that kind of challenge, right? To engage sort of flow, to really kind of work optimally. We sort of need to be pushing things, right? And again, this is like probably a larger subject, but yeah, like creative flow occurs where there is a little bit of fear, right? When there's a little bit of, oh, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to do that, right? Like that seems like that's an interesting idea. And I think often we get a little bit, there's that point where you kind of have been pushing it and you have been experimenting and you have been developing new ideas and that's kind of been working for you and that's kind of cool. But then, you kind of get complacent with it because you kind of get to a good level and you're still enjoying kind of where you were before or drawing those particular things. And then all of a sudden it just kind of becomes old hat, right? Or at least that's sort of one of the experiences that I've had with this is, yeah, you kind of just are like sick of doing a particular thing, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that, as I keep saying. It's just that that's when you got to say, oh, it's time for a change, right? Time to shake things up, time to revisit a lot of these basic exercises, and just kind of refocus, right? And I think because often the experience of being an artist and doing all these things is so emotional that, we kind of do need to, again, like do that work to like re-engage with it and really kind of think about, okay, I'm swapping pencil because that's just getting ridiculously blunt. It's just like a joke now. Yeah, like, is this, I don't know whether this thing is looking cool or not. This is, again, it's not the kind of normal thing that I would kind of draw, right? It's a bit weird. It's a bit different. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how I would kind of really get it to work. But yeah, you just need to kind of re-engage that. Let's see if I can twist it a little bit so that you can kind of see what's going on there. Move that out of the way. Yeah, it's kind of working all right. I'm just not a fan of this head. I just feel like that's kind of not working at all. Yeah, but let's forget about that for a moment. Let's see if we can get this undead guy to be looking more sort of undead. Yeah, so I think it's just important to understand that, you kind of need to view this as a consistent thing, right? That like it's not some major problem. Oh, that one's blunt too. All right, give me one sec. I'm going to sharpen it. All right, here we go. Got it sharpened. Got another one sharpened as well. So yeah, let's see if we can make this guy look more undead. Yeah, so it's just something that, we sort of have to become accustomed to, is like constantly just going back and reassessing, how we're feeling, what we want to draw. And it's very easy to kind of get knocked off, your sort of happy place with this stuff and just kind of lose touch with why you're doing this, what's really exciting about it, etc., etc. Yeah. And so the other things that we sort of go on with the Line and Color Academy is, firstly, probably even before we get to this stage, really sort of looking at why you wanted to be an artist from sort of an inspirational point of view, right? Like looking at our inspiration maps and making sure that you're just continuing to surround yourself with good art and that you again like have good systems for that, for really sort of finding and discovering art that's actually stuff that you like, right? It's so easy to get sort of sucked into, what's sort of popular on social media, and yeah, just sort of lose having. Yeah, still not sure about that. Mouth. Yeah, just kind of lose touch with the art that you actually like, right? And I think especially these days with a lot of digital tools for finding reference, right? Like Pinterest, etc. Although I don't know. I mean, let me know in the comments down below, but I really feel Pinterest is just completely dead because of AI. I mean, it's just impossible to find anything good on there for personally. It's just all AI stuff these days. And as soon as you click on something AI, right, you just get more AI stuff, and it just becomes like bit of a nightmare. But yeah, that's one of the problems is we're beholden to a lot of these kind of digital systems and algorithms for kind of like finding art that inspires us. And I think it can not always be something that, is 100% serving us. And our sort of deeper artistic selves, right? Not to be sort of dramatic about it, but I think that's really important. So we sort of talk about how like even actually books can be a little bit of a better system for finding and getting inspired, and that you also are often fed and given as part of that kind of whole algorithm. Like you're always sort of shown these things that are like really at the apex of creativity is sort of what I call, right? It's the AI sort of thing, right? Where like every AI image is kind of perfectly composed, and it's sort of meant to make your eyes bleed and be this kind of perfect illustration. And a lot of what the AI sort of algorithms have done is get really good at doing that, at sort of grabbing your attention and being like, hey, look at this thing. Look at this. It's so shiny. It's like perfectly, right? There's a lot of sort of formal composition. There's a lot of all the stuff that will work really well, right? In terms of getting people to look, sort of cute girls that all sort of look the same, that are picked from like what gets the most views on Instagram. And so everything's kind of just designed to make you look, right? Like that's the bottom line. And I think often if you look at sort of art books or like other places for your sort of inspiration, if you're not kind of like feeling it or whatever, if you sort of go deeper with those types of subjects, you'll often find like other types of imagery that can be very sort of inspiring and can be a little bit sort of deeper and more interesting than, just kind of looking at this constant cover style, make your eyes bleed imagery that social media kind of tends to give us. And that's not to say that's bad, but again, I think we often need variety and stuff that's a little bit more laid back. Let's chop one of these things off. Let's see if I can really dig in there. Yeah, that's making him look more undead. Right, let's see if we can stick a few sort of arrows in this guy. Yeah, now he's looking more undead. Right, more ragged stuff. Right, again, got some. I don't know where that's going. I think there's like a wing going to be in front of there. Boom. So we're just going to sort of see a rough kind of silhouette of this thing. Right. Boom. Yeah, and again, all that's probably a little bit more faded off. Don't have to worry about it quite so much. Boom. So yeah, it's important to like have good systems for finding and maintaining your own sort of artistic reference, your influence maps, and making sure that you're not adrift in a sea of sort of someone else's priorities when it comes to, sort of what's good or what you're interested in. Because again, I feel like that's often where we become a little bit disenchanted with some of these different, things, right? Like just constantly being fed the same type of imagery and that maybe not being exactly what you want right now. So yeah, we sort of deal with that. And then the other stuff that I think sort of follows that I'll probably do some, other sort of videos on the channel sort of talking about these sort of ideas. But, the other stuff that I think is often like really useful is really defining your goals, right? So, and this is all part of like the sort of stage one stuff that we go through in the Line and Color Academy, which is just about like, how do you kind of get doing it? How do you sort of get over all the hang-ups and just get to a point where you're sort of much more comfortable actually sitting down and having that sort of regular creative practice, right? So these are all sort of just lessons in that sort of stage one. There's like a specific sort of mini course that kind of allows you just to focus on these things. And yeah, we just sort of go deep on how do you get your creative practice sorted. And part of that, as I was saying, is really defining your goals, right? Understanding like, okay, I'm sitting down here and I'm going to draw a undead guy on some kind of creature that I'm not sort of super happy with or whatever. Just yet, we'll see if we can sort of rescue that from the jaws of defeat. Yeah, like what's the goal? What's the point? Am I trying to do a good drawing? Am I trying to be creative? Am I trying to just warm up my hand? Is it important that I find a lot of like quality success? Or is it just about me turning up, right? Often in the beginning, what we're trying to do is less like create masterworks, and it's more like get your ideas flowing, like get into a good creative space, right? Where I feel like comfortable exploring new ideas, right? Or, you know, again, where I feel like I'm sort of inspired again. All right, I feel like I want to sort of cover up these sort of eyes or do something like that feels a little bit more weird. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I should have made it a undead bird. Where are we? Sorry, we're not. Can't see that. Boom, here we go. Yeah. Boom. I feel like I'm wanting to cover up these kind of eyes and make this. Right, I feel like that shape is wrong. I feel like we need to feel, yeah, just a bit more of this kind of flow, right? I think less anatomy, more shape. Less structure, more motion, I guess. But yeah. Boom. Yeah, because again, I feel like this is the other thing is we sort of sit down and people are like, what should I draw? And then you're like, okay, I sort of know what to draw. But then it's like, when should I stop, right? And what am I even doing, right? Often, again, I think often that the solutions and the problems we kind of face that those solutions can solve are really simple, right? We're not dealing with sort of, you know, the mysteries of the universe. It's just a matter of figuring out, like, when are you going to feel good about finishing your art, right? Like, when are you going to feel as if, yeah, like that was a really good session. So if I'm doing this, for instance, I'm like, what would success be? Is it that I'm just sitting down for half an hour and we do a drawing and then it's cool, right? You know, it's sort of, right, that's kind of fun. I'm like, maybe, I don't know. I'm like, I was kind of thinking these could be sort of like painted on. Right, sort of like almost like the eye of Horus or whatever. I don't know whether that's working. It's looking a lot like a real eye. So yeah, not sure. Maybe like a spiral or something might be cool. It looks even weirder. Yeah, do you just is just turning up okay, right? Like what's you know, what's cool? Like what do you want to do? Does it have to be a good drawing? Are you just trying to turn up? So what we sort of look at there is just defining what success means. Is it time? Is it quantity? Is it just that you're turning up? Is it that every drawing like has to be good? So, you know, like for instance, one of the challenges doing these things is I'm doing the video, but also I'm aware that like the better this drawing looks, probably the better it will look on the thumbnail, the more people might click on it, right? And you know, it's often those pressures, right? As I said, where I'm like, oh, I should have just drawn an elven princess, right? Because then I kind of know how to do that, right? And this is where, you know, but then part of me is saying, but I should be creative, right? I should show that we can actually do something interesting. But that's hard, right? And again, it's more likely to fail. So I mean, let me know in the comments down below, right? But I often think it's these things that can really plague us as artists and cause us to, sort of second guess and just sort of be paralyzed, right? Because if you're not really sure, like, what success means to you, if you're not sure, like, when you're going to be able to stop this drawing or whatever you're doing and be like, yeah, that's cool, right? I did do a good job. It's really hard. And in the beginning, I think the biggest challenge is like, it's really challenging to get that feeling, right? It's really challenging to feel as if you've won, because in the beginning, so often our art is just not as good as we want it to be. So I'm just leaning into circles. I'm just like, let's draw some more circles, right? This is probably what AI would do. You notice AI always like circles. Humans like circles, apparently. Let's draw circles everywhere. Yeah. So yeah, often in the beginning, I think this is the biggest challenge, because you just don't, your art is just not where you want it to be. And you can tell, right? Because it's the paradox, right? It's like at some point, often artists, we have the taste and the ability to kind of notice that our work is like not as good as we want. And it's just incredibly frustrating for that to be the case. And so in the beginning, you're sort of sitting there being like, well, I'm kind of never happy with this work, right? Because my art is just not good enough. So that's where we can look at ideas like, okay, how about we just look at like you sitting down, or as an artist, we sit down and we just sit down for half an hour and we do some art. And if you do that and you've been sitting down for half an hour, you win, right? Like that's it. Like feel good and have permission to feel good about your artistic process, that you've kind of just started. And don't expect some sort of magical things to happen, but that if you just kind of keep turning up, like that's what's going to make a difference. Or you might say, you know what? I'm doing something different here. Like I really need this to be like an amazing creative illustration, right? Like this needs to be the best undead bird design thingy that's ever been created, right? Otherwise I'm going home, right? Otherwise that's it. I give up. So, and again, like depending on the goal and how much time you've got, right? It can be really challenging to get like a good sense of like achievement. So you kind of do have to set it up to win in the beginning and just say like, look, if you kind of turn up, you win, right? Like that's good. And then we kind of move on from like, now we're turning up to maybe like, let's do X number of sketchbook pages, right? You can kind of set these things however you want. It's just that you need to kind of set them. You do need to define what success means for you when it comes to sketching or illustration, and be like, okay, this is how much time I'm taking, right? This is what I think is going to happen. And that way, like, hey, if you didn't turn up, right? If you don't turn up, then that's a fail, right? Like, yeah, like don't feel good if you said you were going to turn up and do some sketching and then you sort of didn't for half an hour. But as long as you do, then that's a win, right? Like feel good about it and practice, feeling good about the art that you're making. Again, where's the feet, Tim? Where's the freaking feet? I don't know. Maybe they're there. That's not very good. Again, let's see if we can draw the shadow under this. Boom. So again, it's going to get a little bit kind of messy as a pencil drawing, but hopefully, if we sort of look at it from a focal point of view, right? Let's see if we can sort of point some of these little all right, let's probably, this is all got to be kind of empty. Yeah. So again, there's many different ways that, you can sort of define success. And I think just having a clear picture of it, right, is the first step, right? It doesn't have to be the most amazing thing, but if you set the sort of what success means for you, and then you kind of make sure like, hey, I can actually achieve that. I'm sitting down, I'm drawing this thing. It doesn't have to be the best, but, at the moment I'm just kind of working on my anatomy, or, I'm just working on, again, getting my imagination or turning up or whatever it is. Like, we're all dealing with sort of different challenges. And again, it's not like something where, like, as soon as you figure it out, right? Like for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I figured this out a million times. And then what happens is then I take a break from drawing stuff and talking about it. And then I sort of don't become as good at it for a while. And I got to re-engage and kind of start with something that's easier. So I think just having systems and thinking about this is like a series of tools that you have in your sort of motivational toolkit, right? That you can kind of constantly pull out and you can sort of make them work, and that there's nothing wrong if you're kind of sitting there with a blank page and you're like, I don't know what to do with this. Just understand that, a big part of being an artist is figuring out like how to deal with those things. And, these are tools that can help you, right? And hopefully maybe if you're struggling with this, like this one will kind of help you. But it's also a matter of, figuring out and finding, exactly which tools work for you, right? Not just, not just sort of generically, but, you're going to find some things are really going to work better for you than others. And, you're going to find ways that really help you specifically sort of motivate yourself. And that's what I found, right? There's things that I kind of do that, probably don't work as well for sort of everyone else, but yeah, they're the things that I found really sort of make a difference. So anyway, we're kind of running out of time here, but I just want to, I can't see if I can sort of finish this up, just add a little bit more sort of definition to some of these little bits and pieces. And let me know in the comments down below, like whether this idea has kind of worked for you. Maybe like try it out, come back in a couple of days and sort of drop me a message and see if it worked, ask some questions. As I said, like, this is not something that, like, oh, this is like an easy solution. This is something that requires work and requires you to like figure out who you are as an artist. And, it can be challenging. It can be, something that takes you a long time to kind of really figure out. And you might have other questions, right? Like, again, the question that people normally have after this, where they're like, cool, got the like list. I sat down and, again, because they haven't really figured out what success means, we run into all these other problems, right, that you may be having. And some people are fine with that. And some people are like, yeah, they're struck with the next problem, right? The next problem is often after, like, we got a like list, is as I said, like, what does success mean? Like, what am I meant to be doing in my sketchbook? And again, I think it's like some people have a really good instinctive understanding for this. Some people just don't care and they just get on with it. And for some people, and I'm definitely one of those people, I think too much about this stuff. If you've kind of been paying any attention to this channel, you sort of know that. And that's not good for an artist most of the time, right? It's much better to just get on with it, right? Stop wasting time thinking, just draw, right? It's all good. And so, I've sort of found that, yeah, it's much better for me to kind of develop these systems and ideas around it. But yeah, a lot of people do struggle with, what am I even meant to be doing? And it's easy to get, sidetracked with that, where like, you might have a good year where you're like, oh, I was really on a good track, and then you kind of lose it. And again, often re-engaging is just part of that sort of problem, right? Like just re-engaging with what you're meant to be doing. Super, super challenging. So anyway, I think that's probably all we got time for when it comes to drawing little sort of undead guy here. We'll just see whether that kind of comes out in the wash, whether it kind of looks any good on a thumbnail. I don't know. I feel like we could probably work the 1, 2, 3 read of it a little bit better, right? Like really sort of draw the attention to the face a little bit more, put a little bit more detail here. That kind of stuff might be good to just refine that. But again, success for me means that we've done this demo. We've talked about how to, sort of do your like list. Hopefully this demo has sort of helped you to understand, sort of how I would actually sort of apply it, like what I would do. And yeah, like I've never drawn anything like this. Like haven't drawn undead guys, haven't drawn this kind of thing before. I've drawn lots of characters riding on things, and I think that's sort of been a fun thing. But yeah, you'd be surprised where this sort of goes. But give it a shot. Leave me a comment down below once you kind of had a crack at this, and let me know if you've got any follow-up questions, etc. Yeah, and other than that, also, check out the Line and Color Academy. I'll leave a link directly to it down below. I don't normally do that, but again, it might be good to check if you're sort of interested in, developing a consistent, reliable artistic practice.